Also in Seattle, Mike McCready came up from Pearl Jam and played River of Deceit, the Mad Season song. And Matthew, I think you had a question about Mad Season and how it was going to, or if it might continue. Matt?
Yeah. Hi, Chris. Thanks for coming. Yeah, it was back in January. You guys did the Mad Season with Barrett and Duff and Mike. And I didn't see it in person, but I seen it on YouTube.
Right.
And you just nailed that part.
Oh,
and
thank you.
It was almost like you were channeling your inner Layne Staley. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a very dark Chris Cornell. Mm-hmm. Were you purposely trying to do that?
I think it's just the composition's fault, really, to be honest. But I also think there's a... When I was asked to do that, it didn't... what came next was listening to the original recordings, which was listening to Layne sing in headphones, over and over to learn it and feel like I really knew it. And that was kind of unexpected. I don't want to say dark, but it was, that was tough because I hadn't really done that, and listening to his voice intimately and sing those words and sing those songs, it definitely sort of forced me to kind of reckon with the what happened in his life and the fact that he's not around anymore. And I think that's tough for everybody that knew him, as it is for anybody that loses someone that's a friend that's young, that affects your life, that just fans of his even, that I think that's sometimes almost the bigger tragedy in a weird way, is that of the future imagined creative projects that could have happened that didn't. And, I feel that the same way about lots of brilliant people who die young and kind of senselessly, especially. If it's an accident, you feel like it's an act of God. If you feel like they did it somehow, it's sort of harder to reconcile, it's hard to find a silver lining, but it doesn't change what he did at all.
Do you see you four guys ever going out and doing that?
That's not really something that we talked about. No. We might do something else someday. Who knows?
Okay. Well, the great thing about you is you stay flexible in terms of stuff like that. Right before Soundgarden got back together at the Showbox, is that the name of the theater in Seattle?
That was our first reunion show.
Yeah. I was there by total accident. Stone Gossard had asked me to come out and do some interviews with various members of the bands that preceded Pearl Jam, and he got a night of music together with a bunch of them playing together.
Right, I remember that.
It was really an amazing effort on his part to orchestrate this thing, and I learned so much more that I did not know at the time about the Seattle scene. It was actually just a while ago that I learned that you were roommates with Andy Wood.
Yeah.
What was it like? Well, what was he like as a roommate?
The funny thing is that he ended up being my roommate because I called Stone Gossard and said, my brother just left and I need a roommate. You want to be a roommate? And he's like, no, that's all right. I'm pretty happy still living at home, which I think, I don't know how old we were.
Wow.
We were still pretty young,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
He said, you should call Andy, my buddy Andy, and I kind of knew him a little bit, and I think he was looking for a place to stay in town because there was there's an island thing going on in Seattle, and there's a big difference between being on an island and being in town, and so I called him and he moved in, but it was fun because I think we were sort of having a friendly competition sort of as singer-songwriters the whole time. We both had 4 tracks, or I think I had one and I would record him, and we were both writing songs all the time. And he was almost the opposite of me in terms of how he dealt with his own sort of creative output. He seemed to really have no editing voice in his head at all. He was just free, and he'd kind of write and record anything and not really analyze it too much. And I was sort of the opposite. I have like an editorial staff in my head arguing about what I'm doing. And I took that definitely from him as a lesson to just chill out and be creative and let someone else judge it, or judge it later, but don't have that sort of circumvent the process in the moment. Like, starting to work on a song and me thinking, oh no, this probably sucks. It sucks. It sucks.
Well,
and the other danger is going, this is the f***ing best song that anyone has ever written. And that's where the argument comes in on the other voice. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. And then the third voice. Well, it doesn't have to be either one of those things.
One of the great, strange, beautiful, sad, cosmic coincidences is his tragic passing. Mother Love Bone on the verge of what looked to be an explosion of success musically, and yet, had that not happened, the entity we now know as Pearl Jam never would have existed. That has always struck me as one of those bizarre things of life. What about you?
Yeah, the thought crossed my mind, I think, before. For sure, I think Eddie's creative output would have, obviously, I think, come to being in a way that affects popular culture no matter what. I can't imagine that wouldn't have happened. It just wouldn't have happened in that way. Right. So, and I think that's probably a difficult thing to kind of sit and think about, when you're close to the person that's died, that somehow their passing is kind of made way for another form that becomes really important. It's sort of tough.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that I thought about. I'm not going to pretend that didn't occur to me at some point.
We are speaking with Chris Cornell. We're going to take a quick break and come right back with our MM Archive session. And Chris and Brian are going to do another song for us shortly, so stay with us. You can clap.
Yeah.